This video starts with adding some tar paper to the top of the skylights, just to keep the weather from damaging the wood any further. This is pretty simple. The upper pieces overlap the lower pieces like shingles, and for the same reason. In the background you can see that we started this before starting the fence from the last video. These videos are task grouped, and many of the tasks overlap each other chronologically. I way overdid it with the tape just to make sure there was nothing for the wind to grab. And at the end, Brody did a quick paint job of the inside wood just to protect it. Later that same day I started the copper shingles. I already had some practice with these previously, but these ones were a bit trickier, so I got to do more interesting things with the press brake. It's basically like origami with copper sheets. Someone's bound to ask, so I'll say that the copper sheets cost just under $80 for a 10-foot roll, 20 inches wide. It would probably be expensive to try to cover a whole roof like this, but one roll is enough to do the flashing around one skylight, so not too bad. The design I sketched out would have each piece tie into its neighbor with a folded seam. There was also a flange to fold down over the edge and then a kink again for a drip edge, and then on the other side there'd be a flange to fold up for the skylight curb. Doing the cuts and folds in the right order was key, or you would quickly get into a situation where earlier folds would prevent later ones. For the simple pieces I just drew out the plan right on the copper, and for the more complex ones I'd first template them on that much cheaper construction paper, and then I could run up to the roof and try to dry fit it to make sure it would work before duplicating it in copper. For that hole, instead of cutting it out, I pulled it out, so it would have a flange that would prevent water from getting in. Then I just kind of ground it level so it would look neater. Let's slow it down a bit. Here's my piece of copper. You can also see that I have already marked lines where each fold goes. But if I put the copper into the press brake and I slide it over to the end of this particular fold, it still doesn't fit. So I need to adjust the location of those plates. From my earlier video, you may recall that I drilled some holes to keep the Allen keys handy. Well, one of them is to loosen these plates. Actually, it helps if you first raise the press so it can support the plates, then loosen them. Let's speed this up a bit. Once they're all loose, I can slide them over to the correct position for my particular job. The plates are all different widths, 12 inches, 10 inches, 8 inches, etc. Here I want to add a 3-inch one to this end. I'm looking down at my marks on the copper to see if this is aligned with what I need. Another slight adjustment. Oops. Lift that press again to get the plates in properly. Make sure it aligns with the fold on the copper. Then tighten all the Allen keys. Now we lower the press again to get the copper in. Here I'm just visually lining things up with the black Sharpie marks I made. Cycle the press, slowly because I don't want to mess it up. And you can see my sharp fold ends exactly where I needed it to. Next I need to fold the other way for that dashed line. But this fold is a little bit longer, so I need to add back another plate. Again, we lift the brake to support the plates at the right level, then I slide it over and tighten. One last look for a sec to make sure I don't screw this up, and then into the press brake. When I align it, I mostly focus on the end that touches first as I close the press. Then there's still a little bit of wiggle room to adjust things so they align it properly on the other end. And then cycle the press brake again. Unfortunately, I thought I was showing you the new drip edge fold here, but it's a bit out of frame. Then let's fast forward to the part of the video that continues showing you the reverse fold for the skylight curve. It shows all the same basic steps of adding a plate, then marking, and then folding. Then we get to something new. These plates can actually be removed for making box ends. And for folding those last tabs around, I'll just do it manually on a block of wood. Back to the time lapse so you can see these steps a few more times, including the block of wood there. While it's running, let's ponder the lie that trades do not need geometry or math. I definitely use geometry and basic math a lot more while building this house than I do at my actual engineering job. Of course, I don't expect differential equations to come up here on the job site, but still, stay in school, kids. Fast forward through time a week or so, and we are back up on the roof after those fence posts from the previous video are in place. Now we just shingle on the flashing. I used copper nails that I got from the plumbing department, but that copper sheet was too strong to nail through, so I had to pre-drill each one. I also tried to solder the folded seam joints with an MAP torch. Not so good at that. Somehow I also screwed up the length of that last top right piece, so it wasn't quite long enough to seam properly with its neighbor. I'll need to redo that one in my spare time. Pop on the glass, a few screws, done. Now with the glass on, I could cut out the steel Quonset from below, remove the wood forms, etc. Not too challenging, but now is the time to do it. I actually plan to cover the inside of those tunnels with mirrors to get the light in better, but that'll be a separate video. Coming up next, I'll hook up the hot water heater so we'll have nice warm water to stucco the bedrooms over the winter.